Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphanlast, and today I'm giving you guys a speed paint, and I'm happy to report that Krita 3.1.3 has just been released. It's been primarily a bug fix update where basically there's a lot less memory leaks, and I've noticed this. It feels a lot better where if I draw a line, there's far less lag in between brush strokes, and I mean the lag still exists. I mean there's still problems with Krita, but you know I like to think that there's far more features on Krita than which makes it a benefit. Far more advantages on Krita than there are disadvantages. So I'm not going to get rid of Krita off my computer. My lines seem to work with me a heck of a lot better. Maybe not quite as good as they do on Metabang Paint Pro, but it still made it so that I felt like, hey, yeah, I can refine my lines a little bit better on this building. Last speed painting I provided for you guys, my lines weren't working very well, and I just kind of slapped together the building as best as I could, but you know I wound up with a lot of proportional errors, and I didn't realize that until later on in this video, which pretty much made it so that here I am almost finished with this building, and here I am having to redraw about half the building all over again, or at least readjust half of the building all over again, and I'm glad that I had to do that on the 3.1.3 update versus the previous update, which would have been a nightmare. This most recent update made it so that just things seemed a lot more streamlined. It seemed like things were working the way that they should be, and so I didn't feel like I was fighting the computer and the program every step of the way. And so I'll get into that in a little bit, but basically you can actually see me at this point in the video just kind of refining each line and everything like that. And you saw me look at the first house that I drew, or at least sketched out, and what I'm noticing at this point is, heck, this building in the middle of the picture is one size, and this building that's pretty much on the same plane, pretty close to being on the same plane, is looking significantly larger. And there comes a point where I actually select it with the lasso tool, or whatever the equivalent is on Krita, and then I shrink it down, which isn't really the smartest thing in the world, because even though, you know, not too much of the perspective winds up changing, there are some lines that you need to adjust, which, you know, I didn't have to adjust too much just for the sake of shrinking it. In the end, when I wound up adjusting things, it was because there was a proportion problem in my sketch versus my reference, and so when the reference says something and my sketch is wrong, the sketch needs to actually be fixed. And you can actually see how large the house to the left is in comparison to the one to the right. Anyways, more on that in just a second. Right here you see me actually working with the wrap tool, which basically, if you press W on the keyboard when using Krita, it makes it so that you can get both sides, the left and the right side of the canvas, you can get them kind of smack dab right next to each other, basically. It's hard to really describe it, but like I said in my first video when I was drawing this image initially, if you draw a hedge on the left side of the canvas, you need to draw a hedge, the other portion of the hedge, on the right side of the canvas, because it's a full 360 degrees. And so with the wrap tool, pressing W, you're able to actually get both sides of the canvas butted up against each other and get not just the hedge to match up, but the sidewalk to match up as well. And that was really exciting for me to find out about Krita. I didn't know Krita had that feature until recently. So now, at this point, I can actually print out this picture and wrap it into a cylinder, put some tape on it, stick in a camera if I wanted to, and rotate it 360 degrees, or just keep on rotating it over and over again, and it'd just be one full seamless image, as if you're standing in a scene and just kind of, you know, spinning around in circles, and it's one full seamless image. So yeah, like I said, it's exciting to be able to get both sides of the picture to work that way. I was thinking I would have to do some sort of really convoluted process in order to get that to work, but just pressing W, that's all you need to do in order to get the full 360 degrees to match up on both sides of the image. So yeah, pretty soon here you're going to see me realize the proportion problem. And what the proportion problem is the awning. And I love awnings on houses. I think they look really dynamic, really nice. You see them a lot on southern houses and such like that. Just, you know, you kind of picture people sitting there on, I don't know, like a little bench or something like a little swing set sort of thing on the porch, and just kind of relaxing, you know, smoking a pipe or whatever, and just looking at the neighbors, talking to the neighbors or whatever it is. It's just a really relaxing atmosphere sort of thing. So I like awnings. They're relaxing to look at. When you own one, they're relaxing to have. And so, like, I wanted my reference images to have a lot of houses with awnings. The problem is a lot of times they present a lot of issues. You need to actually pay attention to how tall the awning is, especially if you have a second floor to the building. If you have to adjust the height of that awning, what winds up happening is you need to adjust pretty much everything above the awning as well, and that's exactly what wound up happening. I wound up having to adjust pretty much everything at the top of the awning, and I'm going to actually describe the steps that I took in order to fix this issue. And yeah, you know, the thing is, yeah, it may seem like, yeah, I'm being really super sloppy. When I'm drawing on a pencil and with pencil and paper, I'm not quite this sloppy. But the thing is, like, when you're working with a digital canvas, you have so many tools at your disposal that you can actually fix these sorts of problems rather easy. And here I am lowering the awning right now. You can actually see me drawing it much lower here. And not only that, but you know, if you keep on erasing on a piece of paper and pencil and then draw and then keep erasing, there comes a point where the eraser just no longer works on the paper anymore, and you can just see all your lines that used to exist there, and it gets really frustrating. So you need to be as accurate as possible with pencil and paper, whereas the digital canvas is a heck of a lot more forgiving. And so, yeah, you know, I'm having to redo a lot of stuff, but in the end, I still feel as though I finished drawing my images digitally about the same time that I would normally finish a drawing with a pencil and paper. And so here I am, I'm adjusting a few of the things, like just the upper portion of the house to some extent. There does come a point really soon here where I create a separate layer, and then I grab my main layer and I lower the opacity. And on that separate layer, I go ahead and just do all the fixing that needs to be done. And then I grab the main layer, up the opacity, and wherever I see anything clash, I grab the lasso tool, select everything that clashes, and press the delete key. And that just makes things so much easier to do. And then I just wound up merging those two layers together. And I think it's around this point right here. Let's see here. Nope, not at this point quite yet. I'll speak up as soon as I have something to say. Okay, at this point I've created that separate layer, grabbed the main layer, lowered the opacity, and I'm doing all the things that I feel like need to be adjusted, need to be fixed. And you can actually see exactly the steps that I'm taking in order to do it. there comes a point where you actually kind of get confused by your grid to some extent. Which one should I follow, the red or the blue? But you'll figure it out as time develops. I kind of wish that I drew my red, more red and blue lines in this process, but you know, krita was acting up on me, my computer was acting up on me, and you guys saw the whole process that I went through in order to create the grid, so I was just kind of in a hurry. You can actually see me during portions where I forget that I actually have a grid. But anyways, here you see me ramp up the opacity of the main layer, and wherever I see things clash, I just use my lasso tool, select things, and you know, press delete, and then things start looking a lot better. And then I merge those two layers. Now, throughout the time that I've been drawing this image, I've found that having a layer that's designated specifically for guidelines. If you look at my layers, you can see one that's labeled GL for guidelines. That is extremely useful. I also have a layer that's specifically specified for pillars. And throughout this entire video, you see me delete the pillars, make them again, delete the pillars, delete them again. It's kind of a convoluted process. But the reason why you have a separate layer for something like the pillars is because here I have a door behind one of the pillars, and it's really difficult to try to draw a door if there's a pillar right there closer to the foreground. And so it's just like trying to perfectly draw the door without disrupting the pillar. You know, there's going to be points in time where you're going to be erasing, and then you have to carefully erase without erasing the pillar or the door. That's a pain in the butt. Just use a different layer. And at the very beginning of the video, you saw me draw this little staircase leading up towards the porch. And I really like the porch. I got, at the very beginning of the video, I got all my perspective lines going off, following the grid, the perspective grid really well. And I was really hesitant at this point. I didn't really want to even move that little staircase, but you know, if the door has to be adjusted, because if you notice, I made an extrusion on the bottom portion of the house. It's an extrusion that's actually in the reference image, but it's really difficult to see. And so, you know, you have to understand what you're seeing, and that was in my first video where I was first refining this image. My first, I guess it was my second speed painting. You have to understand what you're seeing, and there's a lot of times where I don't, and so that poses problems. It seems like common sense now that I think about it. If you have an extrusion on the top portion of the house, it's not just going to sit on an awning. It's going to be sitting on the lower portion of the house. So if there's an extrusion on the upper portion of the house, either the bottom portion of the house is bigger than the upper portion of the house, or there's an extrusion of some sort on the bottom portion of the house as a support for the upper extrusion of the house, if that makes sense. I hope I use the word extrusion of this portion of the house and extrusion of that portion of the house, those words a lot while explaining that, so it's easy for you to get maybe confused a little bit. But genuinely and truly, like, you have to kind of think, how would an architect look at this? And you know, I'm not an architect, and so, you know, I'm just trying to kind of think how an architect would. And I'm noticing as I'm drawing these houses more and more often, specific themes, things that tend to exist in a specific way a lot more often than not. And I think, well, there's got to be a logical reason behind that, and it's got to be structural. Anyways, that pretty much concludes it for this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you didn't like the video, please like and share and subscribe anyways. And have a great day. There's a tiny bit left in the video. Please watch, because I think you'll like it.